Hello everyone, this is Bryant from Bryant Tech. In this video, you'll learn what MCP or Model Context Protocol is and how it complements the current generative AI tools. If you're following anything related to AI and machine learning, as someone who is in the technology sector, this next hot thing in the AI ML seems to be this weird acronym called MCP, and everyone seems to be talking about it these days. What is it and how is it going to change the current AI ML landscape? Well, that's why I'm here to explain it in the simplest possible way. Let me break down as you do not know anything about it, but I will cover it just enough so you can start building your own MCP and play with it. In this section of the video, I will start by just giving a high-level overview of what MCP is, and along the way, we'll touch upon the challenges with AI and ML and how MCP became one of the known solutions for the challenge. Before we start, it will be probably a good idea to take a quick review of how this whole AI ML started and how it got here. They will help us to understand the limitations and challenges with the current AI ML field. Remember that OpenAI launched ChatGPT with its model GPT 3.5 release, and Microsoft heavily got involved in it through investment and partnership. After that, we began to see other giant companies such as Google came up with their own version called Gemini. Meta or Facebook came up with open source Llama. Elon Musk came up with a thing called Grok through XAI, and the list goes on and on. And there is this company called Anthropic, which is the name of the startup company that invented its own model called Claude Sonnet, and this is the company behind the Model Context Protocol. It'll be good to know this because you will begin to see all of these technology features get pumped out either to complement the existing technology or to fix what is not really working well. Basically, all of these companies technically compete with each other, but also keep creating something better together as a result because, well, that is how technology has always been. Now, there was a quick history of AI ML. So let's switch gears a little bit to understand some of the challenges that the original AI ML model has. I'm actually working for a company that specializes in an AI ML tool called the GitHub Copilot. So this observation is based on my own experiences and experimentations. Generative AI like GPT, Gemini, Claude Sonnet, and Llama are some of the most famous models that leverage trained data. To generate meaningful responses based on the user trained prompt, this data needs to build dependency graphs, then generate the answer that matches closest to what users provided through the prompt and some additional context. Because these models generate unique answers every time you ask, the result is non-deterministic, which can be very useful to be on the creative side. However, sometimes you do want things to be more predictable. Techniques like prompt engineering will help in this case, but there are other challenges like context length limitation, trained data built up to a certain date, how the generative AI tool can pick up the context, etc. But most importantly, generative AI tools by default will not have the access to any context other than what's coming from allowed trained data. Some limited context coming from the content within the tool itself, and context provided through the prompt. What this means is that anything that involves things like grabbing the data from accessing external URL endpoint, files existing within certain directories, and databases will not be the information the generative AI can utilize. And this is actually what you want, because you don't ever want these technologies to have too much power to view, to add, to modify, or even to delete some data or system that you don't want them to be. They will like sudo, privilege, and permission override. Way too dangerous. No matter what you do, you always want to start by giving these technologies or tools the least privilege. But there is a problem. Imagine this scenario. Let's say you're interested to know what the current weather of your city is. So you go to a tool like GPT or Gemini, then you ask this question: what is the current weather of my city? Even though this looks extremely simple, to achieve this through the generative AI, it requires several permissions that need to query the real data. For example, you need to find your current location, which requires permission to do so. Next, you somehow need to locate the API endpoint that returns the data based on the location. And this endpoint might even require authentication mechanism to retrieve the data. Obviously, if you use your smartphone or search engine, this seems like a built-in feature. But the generative AI was not exactly built for that purpose, and acting like one would require additional permissions and implementations to achieve that. And of course, generative AI platforms like GPT and Gemini can have those features built in already, but they probably did so by implementing additional capabilities to retrieve the data for a real-time API endpoint. And this is just an example of retrieving current user location and weather data based on the location. What if you want to let your generative AI tool leverage messaging platforms like Slack to send a message, Dropbox to read the contents from there, or GitHub issues to read the content from there, or to create new issues? Imagine every company or every user implement in their own way and release separate plugins with their own custom implementations. There will be like a nightmare to maintain with no guarantee for security and free of errors and bugs. And developers will have a hard time figuring out where to start, because there are many all different type of documentation for each plugin with not so much similarity between. This is where the MCP comes in. Model Context Protocol, shortly known as MCP, is basically a protocol that provides developer a standard on how to build extension capability for generative AI tools. If you ever program in an object-oriented programming languages like Java, you can think of it like the concept of interface or abstraction class, which basically provide a certain pattern to implement your own script. Or if you ever use programming frameworks like Spring, Angular, React, you can lead it to that tool, as these frameworks are opinionated in the sense that they let you code according to certain standard. The company behind this MCP protocol is Anthropic, which is a company that built Cloud Sonnet model. This type of development pattern is common in the open source software world. When a new hot technology comes in, every major company rushes in to contribute to something that complement or patch the technology. Similar trends happened in the past with the Docker containers and big data thing. They start with the Apache Hadoop. Anthropic saw a need where the generative AI is lacking, and that was a unified protocol that allows the generative AI tools to easily talk to something other than trained data and user provided prompt. Let's take a look at following picture. In this simplified architecture picture of MCP, there are two major components: MCP client and MCP server. MCP client can be implemented for coding editors like VS Code, Visual Studio Code IDE, Cursor, or even its own extension. MCP server is one that MCP client connect to, but most importantly, one that talks to tools like PostgreSQL, Slack, weather data, file system in your computer, GitHub, etc. Again, even without MCP, it was possible that some developer came in to build some custom extensions or clients to talk to tool directly. However, with the MCP, Anthropic provided standard specifications on how to implement MCP server and MCP clients, SDKs, there's a program library to easily include in your code, and documentation on how to build your MCP server or client. This MCP protocol was announced in November 2024. Since then, just within a few months, a number of available MCP servers just exploded, as you can find in this link. Many companies, including Google, Microsoft, and GitHub, also built and leased their own MCP servers that integrate with their own tools. Before MCP, technology called RAG, which stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation, was a hot thing in the generative AI tool space. And with the Google Next conference that happened in 2025, Google announced agent-to-agent protocol, which is also going to be quite interesting to watch out for. Will the MCP be the replacement of RAG or anything that is out there? No, and currently there are quite many security concerns with the MCP implementation as well. However, MCP allowed to easily extend capability of generative AI tools by unlocking and unblocking what was not possible previously. That is, gathering the context beyond the prompt and the trained data and allowing tool to easily talk to other tools. In this video, you learn high-level overview of what MCP is, why it became famous, and why it would be beneficial. In the next video, I will explain how you can quickly test out MCP without understanding too much of the code by actually seeing some demos.